She is advisory software engineer and team lead from IBM. So I would like to call and take up the session.
Today about how, what is DevOps really? I'm really talking about what is DevOps, and the way we've classified it, we call it the agile leap from CI to CD, right? You've been doing continuous integration in your organizations. Moving from that to continuous deployment, continuous delivery and then deployment is a challenge. Like Raj just mentioned, it's difficult in environments like telecom environments where you don't have a setup that you can test on, right? We were once talking to one of our customers who's a telecom operator in the Middle East, and he was saying the way they test out their code changes is deploy the code in the live environment, make the calls in the live environment, and then at billing time, they add a flag that says test, so that that doesn't get billed to anyone, right? So this is the way typical organizations today, large organizations, systems organizations, telecom organizations actually work. And when you say you have to go from CI to CD, there are multiple challenges involved. There is infrastructure that is involved. There are processes that are involved that need to take us there, right? So. Alright. So this is the agenda. Talk about what is the aim of DevOps, what is the approach towards it. So we start off with Agile because I think a lot of us know about what Agile practices are, what actually goes on there, and then talk about how Agile moves to DevOps. What do we need to do there? We talk about lean transformation, and lean is a very important concept. I noticed that was one of the building blocks in the last session as well. So what do we mean by lean there? And then DevOps adoption patterns, and what we've done at IBM and how that's given us results. So just some statistics and number crunching for those interested in it. Okay. All right. So what is the aim of DevOps? In one word, if you think about it, it's just business excellence. I have something that goes out to market, the customer loves it or hates it, gives me feedback, and I can incorporate that feedback to give the next session, the next release of the product or a new product itself. So how do we do that? Through a systematic use of principles of Agile and some tools. You need tools to help you in this process. You can't do things manually. The second thing is to improve performance. Performance of everyone in the entire cycle, from your product manager, to your architect, to your designers, to your testers, coders, right towards the end, even monitoring how do you get customer feedback, even that needs to be improved, right? How do you get feedback from your end users? So how do we do it? One of the approaches to use is lean. So what do we mean by lean, right? So lean is nothing but removing waste, right? It's like, if I'm fat, cut the fat, become slim. That's all it is. Remove the extras that are not really productive, not really useful, actually causing more harm than good. And how do we do that? So there are wastages at different levels. One is, so the product manager says, I've been studying the market and I think we should do this feature. So it comes to us and then we look at it and we say, what, we can do another cool thing over it. But then why are we doing that? Just because we're engineers, we like to over-engineer, we like to produce more, we like to show our skill with technology sometimes. That's wastage. Do you even know if a customer is going to use it? Is that going to give you anything, in terms of revenue? Probably not. So overproduction is one of the biggest wastages. Time and resources waiting. So this is a topic that I'm very passionate about because I also do service virtualization, right? Service virtualization is the concept of if you don't have your backend systems ready for developers and testers, then really a lot of people are waiting on someone to make that system ready. And typically, if you look at how much time is spent in testers setting up systems and configuring them, you'd be surprised that more than 40% of the time goes in setup and configuration and not actually testing. And that's a huge wastage. So, and while they are doing that, everyone else is waiting on them to finish that. So you have your pre-planning and your planning and all those things stretch into long periods of time just because systems are not ready. So time and resources waiting on something is another wastage. And processes themselves, and we don't even have to go there, I think that's very obvious, how processes sometimes can be a big overhead. Poor quality products, and that's the biggest wastage. Just because you made something and you shipped it, even if customers don't like it, you don't mind keeping it there in the market, right? But there are so many resources that go into maintaining that product. For instance, there might be just this one unfortunate customer that picked up the product, deployed it, and then you get a barrage of PMRs, escalations, defects, all sorts of things. It's a wastage. If you knew it didn't work, why did you take it out of the market the first day? So wastage of products is probably the biggest and the most costliest wastage of all. So this is what we're trying to do, right? Reduce the waste. If you know it doesn't work, take it out. It's okay. You've lost money, make sure you don't lose any, right? So that's what we're trying to do. Okay, so if you see this, the wastage can't be completely eliminated, right? So we're saying from 60-40 it goes to 80-20. So there tends to be wastage. We are humans. We always like a little fat. We like to eat sweets sometimes, you know, make up for all the other things. Okay, so what do we mean by the Agile Manifesto, right? What do we do here? So we value individuals and interactions more than processes and tools. Okay? So that's the first thing. We're concentrating on people here, on what is it that people are doing with each other on their own. That's the point of interest. Working software over documentation. You know, as much documentation as I have, if I have to give a game, let's say to a 3-year-old, he's not going to go read your documentation to see how to play that game, right? He's going to go click out, figure out how to do it all on his own. So working software is what you need, not documentation. Customer collaboration or contract negotiation. So all that you might have said in the contract, you know, you probably have put in 100 different clauses, but ultimately, is the customer happy? Will he come back to you? Will he buy your product? That's what's more important. And responding to change over following a plan. You know, this morning at 5 o'clock, I got a call and that said, you know, there's this customer issue, and then we need this fixed immediately because they need to deploy something. We could have said, oh yeah, but there's a process of how you do it. You first go to support, and then support will raise a ticket, and then the ticket will come to development if it's required. So if you're actually following a plan, you've lost the customer sometimes, right? So can you adapt yourself? Can you respond to change quickly enough in order to make sure that what you have out there is successful? So while I'm saying all this, you see, things on the right are important, right? It's not that we're completely saying that's not worth anything. They are important, but what's more important is the things on the left. And when you focus on the things on the left, you tend to see results that are quicker, better. So if you look at, so there was a study done in 2013, right, a global CEO study. And the question that they were asked is, what are the most important external forces that will impact your organization over the next 3 to 5 years? And if you see consistently, technology factor has been rising up, right? So in 2004, technology factor was at a number 6 position. For the last 3 years, it's been in the top 2. And in the last 2 years, it's been in the topmost position. So it is an important factor, right? And people understand that if they do their software delivery well, they will be successful. But how many of those who realize that if they do that well, it will be successful, actually do it in their organization? So that's the ratio, right? 86% no, 25 actually do. So that is the big gap that we are addressing right now. So even while we say that we are going towards continuous delivery, continuous deployment, really are you continuously deploying? Are you like Facebook that's throwing out an update every 12 days, maybe every 2 weeks? Probably not, right? And so then what are you talking about when you're talking about continuous delivery and deployment? So we'll see why that's happening, why people are not able to go from, you know, continuous delivery to continuous deployment, and what we can do there. And what are the reasons, right? Why do you need to do all of this? So one of the reasons, of course, customer expectations. So the same customer that I was talking about this morning, they wanted to know, so has the product been used by someone else in a similar environment like this? So they want to know, they want to make sure that you are prepared to handle the situations that they will come across, right? So there are expectations there. There's also the changing business environment, the massively interconnected back-end systems that you have today. So I remember when I started off a few years back, there was a simple application that would talk to one database, one web application server, and that was probably it, right? That's it. I had 2 back-end systems, I had my own system, and that's as complex as my software could get. And then as we're seeing more customer deployments now over the last decade, over the last 12, 15 years, you see the backends are huge. So the other day we were talking to another telecom provider in India, and he said, I have 40 different backend systems, different technologies, SAP somewhere, TIBCO somewhere, something else somewhere. And I give my users maybe 5 apps that talk to all these 40 backend systems. So do you have a solution that can, basically take care of DevOps for all of this? So how do you deal with such situations? Now, where do you focus your attention on when you have 40 different backend systems? Which ones are the most critical? Probably not all of them. There would be some that are not so critical, some that are critical. Which ones actually affect your value chain? Those are the ones that you'll have to pick out and then figure out how you start applying DevOps to those. So, and also in this world of what is called SOCOMO, right? Social cloud mobile, where everything is just moving fast. You have a mobile app that comes out today and then in 2 days someone just crashes it. This is horrible mobile app, no one's ever going to use this, and this company is, the branding is going to go down because of this. How are you going to take care of such things, eventualities? What will you do there? So it becomes all the more necessary to take care of these things in a fast manner. So when we say we're going from agile to DevOps, you see, as you go right on this step, you get more towards DevOps, and you start off from agile. So when we talk about agile, we're talking about continuous builds, right? So you have a development team. The development team is writing code, and you want to make sure that the code that they're writing actually compiles into something usable. So you do continuous builds. Continuous builds are usually automated these days. You have BVT, build verification tests, to make sure that the builds are fine and so on. Now, once you've done that, so what? So what's the next? Am I going to ship just my binary? Luckily for some organizations, they just do that. They just ship the binary and let the people writing code on top of their own stacks take care of the rest. But mostly not, right? I mean, if you are creating software that's out in the internet, or if you're creating a product, you can't just ship binaries. So you move towards continuous integration. So what do? You try and pick up all the different parts of your systems. If you have backend systems that you need to test against, you make sure those are available for testing. You make sure that for every build that comes out, you run some automated integration tests. Okay, so you get to continuous integration. Now, when you go from continuous integration to continuous delivery, what are you trying to do here? I'm saying that, okay, now the system works actually with the backend systems. So what do? We try to make an install package of that, and we try to make that automated again. So creating the install package itself would now become an automated process, and this is where you make it ship ready. So when you say it's ship ready, it is available to be installed somewhere, right? And then the final thing is the continuous deployment. Okay, so you made it ship ready, now what? So how do I figure out which machines I want? How do I figure out which builds get installed on which machine? So I might have a product that runs on Linux, on Solaris, on Windows, and then maybe a Windows Metro version, Windows non-Metro version. So how do I make sure I get the correct machines? I get the correct installers to install on that machine, and all in an automated way. So like I said, testers will typically spend a lot of time here, getting the machines, then saying, okay, you need a license of some sort for a backend, and then install this on this. Then you realize the install itself fails, it doesn't work. So when you say continuous deployment, all of this is automated. I can get the machines I want, I can figure out which builds go where, and once I install it, I know which tests to run on which machines. So the way my product functions on Solaris or Linux might be very different from the way it functions on Windows. So are those tests ready to be run on those systems? That's another important aspect, right? So getting to continuous deployment involves a lot of tools and processes, like we said. So the whole chain that we saw right there, you see Agile and Lean, what we talk about, reduce wastage and focus on those 4 pillars, your people and processes, your collaboration with the customers, all of that, those 4 processes has to be applied at every part of the cycle. So right from product management, that is going through to market, figuring out what are the relevant things to be done, from your developers to your testers, everyone has to have their end focus as a customer. Only then they realize that this is very important to me. Okay, so as a result, what you're doing is you're basically optimizing software delivery. You're cutting down on wastage, means you're reducing the time that was taking to get your releases out. You go to market faster, you see return on investment, either positive or negative faster, you incorporate that feedback, and then you make more better results. So what are the principles and values? So like we said, there are three players here: people, processes, and tools. Okay, so when we talk about being DevOps ready or practicing DevOps, everything that you do is against a production-like environment. There are no testing machines, there are no developer machines. So sometimes, a defect comes, and then it used to happen a while back that the tester said, oh, but it's working on the machine that I tested on. So are you going to ship the machine to the customer, or are you going to go sit with them to figure it out? That's not possible, right? So everything has to be in a production-like environment. A lot of times you'll see companies, the samples that they give to customers, right? When you're talking about a product, for instance, you say, oh, so this is a sample and this is how it would work against a sample. And the samples would be so outdated. Probably what would work 10 years back doesn't work for a customer anymore. You have a sample where you are probably doing something at a minor portion, but the customer is saying, oh no, but you see, that's a very simplistic thing that probably never happens in the real world. That has to be improved, right? So I need to have testers testing in real environments. If you can get customer test beds, nothing like it. Can you get customer test beds, put them on your, in your labs and facilities, test against those environments. So if you can do that, that's where you're going towards DevOps. And then iterative and frequent deployments. So it's not enough to be deployment ready, right? If I'm ready, I'll always be ready. But when do I get into real action is when I actually do it, right? I do it and then test it out. If all those processes that I followed all this while really worked for me, was I able to successfully deploy that product?
But we've always had early field trials, right?
Yeah, so then there are betas, right? So see what happens, early field trials, I think you're referring to,
You're putting the software out there, so without it being released officially.
Exactly.
You've got some customers who are ready to actually test it out for you.
See, there are 2 points to that, right? And I find this very interesting. The one point is, you go to the customer at a point when you can't really make a U-turn anymore. I've written all my code. I've tested it perfectly against test cases. I can make minor changes, right? But if the customer finally comes back and says, oh, but this is not at all what I meant, I was talking about something else, it's just a waste of 2 months of work of maybe 10, 15, 20 developers, right? So how do you keep that going while you are developing? How do you throw out enough to the customer to keep getting his feedback?
That's through sprint demos anyway.
So
as a sprint demo and a review, the customer is continuously reviewing my work.
Yes.
And what I'm doing in EFT is actually letting him play with it now. And then I'm going to see actual production related and live defects coming in, because which will never show up in my development environment. Because my development environment is so tuned, and my developers have no backdoor entries to fix it.
Right.
But here, they're actually going to load test it, live agents, I'm saying anything, right? People are going to log in, hit it, whatever, click it, and that's when I'm going to know what actually works or breaks. So I've been doing this forever. So how is DevOps any different?
So then you've been doing DevOps forever. See, so what we're saying there is, you've sent it out to customers, but are you doing it yourself in such environments before you go to the customer? You're using customers to test your product. Eventually that, right? You're saying, okay, we tested in whatever limitations we had, but now let's go give it to them so that they can try it on their own systems. But if you had that incorporated, probably the only thing you need from the customer is not the defects in the system, but his feedback on whether this is what he was looking for. See, ultimately it becomes, if you think about mobile apps these days, it's mostly crowdsourcing. Who tests mobile apps, right? You have 399 devices. It's almost impractical to test on all devices. So you'd probably test on an iPhone or maybe a Samsung, maybe an HTC or Micromax or something. But then what about the remaining 395 devices? You probably won't ever touch them. So it becomes impractical in that case, and then it's okay to push it out and say, okay, maybe 10 of my 10,000 users are going to be on an LG Optimus or something of that sort. So it's fine. I mean, if they find a defect, it's all right. We'll fix it when it comes. But is it possible for you to create that environment in your local setup where you are doing that testing on a continuous basis?
We do
I
actually.
think that is the point.
We do actually. So
then you are following DevOps. You should be doing this session.
yeah,
But that's very interesting. So you are saying you have customers.
So Cisco does it.
Okay.
So Cisco does it, right? And they've been doing it for like ever. So they've got something known as Golden Bridge. So we have development. You do the initial whatever, unit test, functional test. Then it goes to a GB team. The GB team is actually nothing but it's a collection of.
every point. You know what customer environments are like, so that's good.
One point is like I agree to him like the continuous integration is a zero step
Mm-hmm.
because like within a Scrum team, almost not possible within a given 1-2 week sprint or 3 week sprint. And yeah, this is definitely a better idea like how we can do it. Not
So
to take
actually
it, but
sometimes I
yeah,
think about it, right? And I was giving you this example of this.
for delivery we don't have yet.
Okay, so I was saying like the Middle East, right, where they were actually doing their live testing on the testing of their code on the live environment. I think they're closest to DevOps can test against, but really they're testing on a live environment. They know what fails, what breaks. The only thing there is that risk is magnified, right? If something goes wrong, it can go terribly wrong, and that would affect a lot of people. So when you try to create a customer-like environment on your own end, you're mitigating that risk. You test on actual data, but if there is something that goes very badly wrong, you can still, isolate it and take care of it. Okay, so as you're doing this, what you would end up doing is you're constantly validating the quality of your product in live-like environments, right? And I think what's important about the last point is the amplified nature of the feedback loop. So until now, if it was being tested internally, it would just come back, and then you'd look at it and you'd probably say, oh, but this